Hi everybody, it's Mick here from Climate Salad. We love talking to smart people about very complicated, interesting areas which are having huge influence on our future of a stable planet where we can breathe the air, drink the water, and have abundant food. And one of those areas I think which are massively underappreciated is soil, seaweed, and algae. And we've got an algae expert here today, Nick Hazell. Nick, algae is something that 99% of people don't want to have access to and interactions with on a daily basis, but probably do indirectly anyway. Tell me why algae is so important and why it's so important to fighting climate change.
Yeah, look, the reason we can breathe oxygen is largely because of algae, and we think it's forests, but it was algae that were responsible for the great oxygenation, which changed our planet from a fiery CO2 ridden in uninhabitable planet into something which contains oxygen and has a stable climate. And that was basically the what algae did for us. So what did algae do for us? Well, that's what they did for us. And as a result, we have a stable climate, and evolution happened. Animals were born, dinosaurs were born and died, and humans came along and started taking all this embedded algae, which is kind of crude oil, and started burning it in order to put more CO2 into the atmosphere, because obviously we wanted the planet to warm up a bit. So algae is it's prevalent. There's millions of species out there, of which we only know of a few of them we've characterized. And it's a microorganism which, if you give it light, grows like hell. And what it does is it absorbs CO2, emits oxygen, and grows in abundant light. And this algae is in ponds, it's in the sea, it's in soils, it's actually everywhere if you care to look. And it can be manipulated in exactly the same way as bacteria or yeasts, and grows with, as I say, with those inputs, which is pretty cool because you don't need land. What you need is CO2, and you need energy to give you light. Now, obviously, in nature, that light comes from the sun directly. But if you want real control and real productivity, you give it the wavelengths of light that algae love to use to grow. And if you do that, basically what you've got is a photobioreactor, which is you have a reactor where you give algae light and it grows. And that, for us, is what the opportunity is for algae. You basically have a biotech industry where your inputs are energy and CO2.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a great introduction in terms of the long history, bringing us up to now and a bit of a hint into the future. So obviously, algae has played a big role in terms of humanity's prosperity, and we take it for granted. And obviously, we're not in balance with the environment now. Your idea is to actually take an engineering approach to algae and to try to use it to accelerate us getting back to a point of sustainability. And it obviously advantages in terms of space and land, because I think we need something like 14 planets if we want to plant enough trees to soak up the CO2. So yeah, tell us about how you're approaching using algae to solve this problem.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look at it from an engineering perspective, we got, they call it a mass balance problem. So we've put about 1,000 gigatons of CO2 into the atmosphere that wasn't there 100 years ago, and that's because we've burnt all of this carbon that we've taken out of the ground, and that's causing climate change. And we're still pumping it out there at 50 gigatons a year, and the to get back to a stable climate, you're going to have to take some of that 1,000 gigatons and get it out of the air and put it back into a stable form so it's not in the air. Um, the moment, what currently what's happening is a lot of that carbon dioxide is being dissolved in the oceans, and the oceans are getting acidic. So don't put it in the oceans, because that's causing another problem. So the only way is to get it back into the land. Now, I'm of a view that we don't do anything for the good of the planet. We only do things for the good of economies. So the way I look at it is, if you can start making all of those things that you currently make out of fossil fuels, so things like plastics and biofuels and polymers, all those things that we do as human society that you measure in gigatons, and we pay for gladly. Well, if you can make those at the same price as you can make it from fossil fuel, but make it out of CO2 through algae, then there is a chance that we might actually start sucking the CO2 out of the atmosphere and putting it into all of this embedded CO2 in our plastics and polymers and the things that we use every day. The only caveat here is that no one is going to pay more for something that's sustainable. I know it's a terrible thing, but it's just the reality. We won't
It
do it.
is.
Even us hardened environmentalists who know what we're doing to the planet take a look, go to the supermarket and go, oh, that's 20% more expensive, and then we buy the cheaper one. So
Mm,
and given that this is a rich Western society, we can afford to spend an extra 15%. We still don't bloody do it.
yep.
Let alone the rest of the world that is doesn't consume very much and wants to consume more. So
Mm,
our job as Algenie is figure out how to do all this so that there is no economic premium versus the equivalents that we get from fossil fuel. And the good news is we think we can do it. It's not actually inconceivable. And our goal as Algenie is make algal biotech or biomass. So if you like, crude algae. So it's not crude oil, crude algae, which in some ways you could kind of say it's fresh crude oil. Make it at $1 a kilo. And $1 a kilo is about $80 a barrel, which was what the price of crude oil was when I started Algenie. And the trick there is get the green premium out and then make it widespread across all of the sort of the biotech that is currently able to be made from algae. And it is a lot. We can make plastics, polymers, pigments, chicken feed, fish feed, you name it. It can be made from algae. It's just that why would you do it unless actually there's an economic reason to do it? And so
Yep.
that's our job. So Algenie
Yeah.
is picks and shovels. We're going to make these photobioreactors ridiculously cheap,
Yep.
50 times cheaper than the best ones around today. And we're going to use cheap renewable energy to fire up our LEDs to grow algae. And
Look, it's we need about 100 forms of alchemy effectively here, right? We need to be able to take this thing that naturally happens and use our ingenuity and innovation and collaboration to be able to accelerate that. We've overconsumed on one side, and we need to balance if we want to live for another couple 100 years, which I would kind of like to do, certainly for my kids and my grandkids. So. Who don't exist just yet, but I'm optimistic. That's the kind
I'm
of
sure
guy
that
I am, Nick.
they'll come along. The only thing I would say is that when I do get frustrated, I did teach innovation for a while at UTS, and I talked to some academics, and they're saying, you know what we need to do is we need to destroy. First of all, we destroy capitalism, come up with a new economic way of running the planet, and
Yep.
then we can start saving it. And I'm going, I'm not, I'm not going to be. I'll be dead and gone way
Way
before that
before.
ever happens. We
I
need to
totally.
use capitalism,
Yep.
so let's use the
That's.
mechanism that got us into this problem to solve the
Yep.
problem.
Yep. I think that's exactly right. And I think actually, when you talk about having, if a business had an Algenie and some solar panels and maybe a little wind turbine and some batteries, you can actually get to energy independence, and we should be able to provide it to the entire world. Like this, we should actually be able to. Let's not say completely burn capitalism to the ground, but we should be able to make it as a lot more equitable. But we do it in a process. It's got to be done in steps, and it's got to be done in sort of in sequence, but it's also got to be done in parallel, as you said. We can't solve capitalism then solve climate. We can't solve climate then capitalism. We've got to be able to have influences along the way. Um, but
Well,
the
the
way I
good
picture
news
this,
is
huge.
that anybody that's got sun or wind can have a solar farm, and anyone who's got a solar farm will be able to create biomass. And
Yep.
the tools for doing the manipulation of algae to create lots of different chemistry is anybody with an internet connection can get hold of them and do it. So this could be the next revolution. And look, there will be winners and losers. I mean, if you
Yeah.
have no access to cheap energy, you're gonna struggle.
Yep.
But there's a lot of places in the world that do have access to cheap energy, and you can put your solar panels anywhere.
Yep.
But that's what you need. That's the CO2 that's in the atmosphere. Plenty
Yep.
of we can suck that up. What you need is cheap energy, and if you've got that, then you've got basically cheap chemistry,
Yep.
which could be the next industrial revolution.
And I think what you're talking about there is this what I call cumulative convergent exponential growth, where you have, cheap energy is getting better, battery storage is getting better, grids are getting better, and technology like Algenie that is it's been so impressive to see how quickly it's been developed and heading towards just like that commercialization and scale. Really, really exciting to see such investor interest globally and absolutely warranted based on the incredible IP and the incredible market opportunities, but both of those together. So I think it's one of the pieces of the puzzle. It's great to see how well it's coming along. Look forward to catching up in another month or so as you keep growing this business. And thanks for sharing so much today around the importance of algae and what Algenie is doing to grow that industry.
Cool. Thanks, Mick.